Hi, it's Therese here from Energy Equation. Welcome to an interview with Alison Collins. I had the privilege to sit with Alison earlier this year and have a discussion about her life, what she does, and the women's workshops that she runs. And I hope you enjoy the results of this discussion. Alison is a certified breathwork practitioner. She's a celebrant and she also runs women's workshops helping women connect with themselves and with their community. She's quite an amazing woman, and I hope you enjoy this interview and that you get inspired by it, because I certainly was. And if you want to get in contact with Alison, you can contact her at sacredcreations.com.au. Enjoy. So you do work with women for workshops as well as you're a celebrant?
Yes.
So how did all of that come to be?
Big journey, I guess. My own personal healing journey, I think probably started around 1998 when I was living inside a domestic violent relationship, and knew that, I guess somewhere, some part of me knew that I needed to get out of there, and I didn't have the resources, didn't know how to do that. I think a lot of divine intervention with the right people being sent my way to kind of point me in a bit more of a direction. I started to have some fabulous counselling work done with this beautiful, I call them earth angels, people who kind of arrive in your life at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had some great people come my way that really supported me to move beyond that. So that in itself was a huge journey. It took, I was inside that for 11 years. So inside a situation like that for that long, there's no self-esteem, there's no self-value, there's no self-worth. It's all been eroded over that course of time, I guess. So whatever work I was doing was just beginning to put a little bit light back inside of me and leading me in a different direction. So yeah, then I went off on my own personal journey, did a lot of healing work, which was probably around a 4 or 5 year period. During the course of that work, which was really I don't know, I always look in and say there was no foundation in there. There was nothing left. It was kind of starting from scratch. So a little bit like, Madonna reinventing yourself. I had nothing to work with, so I just had to begin again, really. So I guess the work that I did and the people that were in front of me showed me a different way of living and being. So I guess I had an insight into when someone has confidence. I didn't know what that was like. I didn't know what the word no meant. I didn't know I could say no, all of those sorts of things. So pretty much I had to relearn everything. So went in there, with some fabulous facilitators and teachers and experiences, for a long time. And then something shifted within me, that obviously more belief about myself and belief that perhaps I could do this, led me to my own, healing point where I felt like I was enough now. But through that experience was such a strong desire that I wanted to become that for other women, that I wanted to say, well, hey, I can turn my worst case scenario into my best resource and take that out into the world. So that, that part of me was born, that I knew I was always a nurturer and a helper and all of those sorts of things. But that had actually cost me in my life, being that before I thought that was the only way that, if I was a helper or all of that, it was exploited.
Yeah.
So how do I do that in a healthy way? How can I be that? Because that is a strong desire in me. So yeah, I think a lot along the way I had to discover that that is my mission, my passion, is to be that for other women. And I guess being able to say, hey, I walked that path over that way for a long time till there was nothing left really. So I know the struggle, the journey, the challenge to rebuild after all of that and begin again. But you can do it. Don't buy the story.
yeah. Change it, rewrite it.
Yeah, I mean, if you've had years and years of people telling you that you're worthless, useless, stupid, ugly, fat, all of those things, you believe it. You're so manipulated by that. You're so brainwashed, you just really embody it. And I completely embodied that to the point, that I can look back at, I started journaling probably in 1998. And I can look back and read through my journals and think, who was that woman? Who was that young woman who so didn't have any idea of her magnificence or, her contribution and all of that sort of thing. So it's been a really interesting journey.
Massively.
Yeah.
And you talk about the healing work you did, but what type of work did you do? Like, where did you start?
Oh, look, I remember that I answered an ad one day and it was so amazing. You know, when the time is right, the teacher will appear, you know, that old saying. And this ad in the paper was about this big, but to me it had flashing neon lights and it was about 6 foot by 6 foot when I looked at that ad. And really all it said was self-esteem, inner child. And I had no idea what the inner child was at that point, you know, and I thought, well, okay, for some reason this is just right in my face. So a beautiful woman entered my life who I then began doing my healing work with, and it was fundamentally all about the inner child. So it was about regret, going back, doing weekend after weekend for years and years and years, doing one-on-one breathwork sessions with her, doing amazing work with this woman. You know, I was with her for around on and off probably 12 years worth of work at different points, to the part where I, you know, eventually became the qualified breath worker, who then went on to training in child work, and then, you know, that's a part of my work too, taking that out there. So, you know, it was intense. It was extremely painful. Yeah. There were times where it was just, oh my God, you know, I had no idea what was beneath the surface. You know, what was driving the decisions and choices I was making at that time in my life, particularly around relationships. You know, there was a real theme that the relationships I was in or entering into all had a common, quite abusive aspect. You know, it actually amped up. So it was emotional abuse and, you know, intellectual, all that emotional, physical, you know, ending up in the most horrific kind of abuse towards the end. And there came a point one day where it was like, well, hey, I'm the common denominator. It had such a massive impact. And, you know, my understanding now, I know so much more about why we become who we are and how we're influenced by our surroundings and our beliefs, and how we adapt ourselves in order to receive love in any way, shape or form. Doesn't mean always healthy. So it's like, man, I was thirsty for love, so I was morphing into all sorts of things in order to have that part of me met. So, you know, that ultimately took me into some really heavy duty experiences that were not fun and all of that. And in order to be in situations like that, we split from ourselves. So it's quite a numbing. If you look back and ask me lots of stuff, it's like, hey, I wasn't present. I wasn't there anyway. So, you know, it's just like the body going through things, but emotionally absent.
So breath work, you touched on it, was something that you did for yourself. But for someone who isn't very familiar with it, I've never done it myself. So what's the process and the philosophy behind it? Okay, so the philosophy behind the breath, I guess, is breath is everything. Without the breath, we know that will only last a few minutes. So, you know, when we talk about, in other cultures, you hear the word, you know, prana and life force and all of those things, you know, across all modalities, the breath is key. The breath is key to the unconscious as well. So in breath work, we're working with the breath. So it's not about, you know, people say, is this meditation? Is this yoga? Is this, all of those practices have breath and is very vital, important part of their practice. So breath work is consciously connecting to the breath. So they are called conscious connected breaths. When we breathe in this manner, we actually are accessing our unconscious. So we know that, here's an example, say we're driving along and someone pulls out in front of us and we have that fright and we all do that. And it's like, it's an involuntary universal sound that we all do. So the breath is often trapped here. You know, this is chest breathing, high level anxiety, you know, up here. But we are not aware that we can often be spending every day in this breath. So when we're using conscious connected breathing, we're actually accessing, well, where's my breath right now? We want the breath down deep in the belly. And when we move this breath down here in a breathwork process, when you're having a breathe, when you're having a breathe, you're laying on a mattress, the person facilitating, the coach is sitting next to you and just inviting you to take these conscious connected breaths. And what that means is that there's no real pause between the in and the out. It's taking the breath in and out and in and out and in and out. That's conscious connected breaths. You're working with the breath.
over time, your body has all these coping mechanisms. It wants to, keep you safe and shut you down. But over time, we're telling the body, relax, it's okay, you're safe.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep breathing. So we just keep breathing in that manner for around 15 or 20 minutes. And then the facilitator will be asking you just to, everybody does it differently. I have to say that there are so many forms of breath work, so many practices. So in my practice, after 15 or 20 minutes, I'll be just checking in how you're feeling. It's often the case that you will feel body sensations. So you could feel some tingling in your fingers, in your toes, in your legs, around your mouth, and that's all natural and normal. So we just keep going beyond that. But there's a real point it doesn't happen for everyone in the very first session, but over time these coping mechanisms relax, and some of this unprocessed anxiety, trauma, whatever, starts to filter to the surface. And so, I always use the adage when I'm doing breath work, it's like, has anybody ever had a beach ball and you've held it beneath the water and it's, that pressure. And this is what's internally in us when we haven't processed a trauma or an event or whatever. Unbeknownst to us, we're actually spending a lot of our energy holding these things beneath the surface that we're unaware of. So with the breath over time, we can access some of this. Some of it we don't need to know a thing about. It just moves through. Others, an event could have been quite traumatic, so we may get memories of that, or we can work through that. And it's really vital in work like this that we understand that we are not the trauma, we are not the grief, we are not the pain, the anger. But what we've often done is we've shut that off. So it keeps cycling. But when we give it the space that it can come through and move through, begins to heal.
Which takes me into your workshops and the workshop work that you do with women. And so how did these come to be? Was it just natural evolution? You thought, okay, start with some women, create the space, hold them in that space, allow them to explore who they are. So what do you I guess, facilitate during the process in the workshops?
Well, I think I've been doing this now since 2003. So I've been running women's gatherings and women's retreats, leading retreats. So I just remember a defining moment, and my business name that I gave birth to within all this healing space was Sacred Creations. And it was like, for me, and whenever you have a business name, you really want to make it resonate for you, because that is who you are. That's an extension of you. So for me, that was, right on the money, because I got that I have a big pull towards the sacred, honouring and respecting and all things like that. And the creation, can be many things. I mean, what you are a creation. You're a beautiful creation. And what do you want to create? And your creation matters. And so it's sort of multifaceted. But I remember the moment that I just sat there and went, that's my business name, Sacred Creations. And what does that mean for me? Well, then it went on to become this, holding the space, setting the space, which was sacred in the appearance of how it looked was so gorgeous to come into such a space that's prepared lovingly for you. It's sacred in the way that it's safe. It's sacred in the way that all things discussed and shared in that space are sacred and honoured, and they don't go beyond that. This is a place where you come to be yourself, not have any judgments placed over you, or you can't say or do these things. It's okay to come into this space. And the creation part, I guess, for me is, for as long as I've run these gatherings, every month for me, obviously, it's been a process. I can't take you, as I said earlier, through something I'm not willing to go through. So if I'm trying to create from my head, it's like an intellectual experience. And I know that. I can feel the difference. So when I come from my head and I just come straight into my heart, and what is it that women need? And I guess every month I create a new experience. And inside that experience there's also a mini workshop. So there'll be a topic. And these topics, everything that I do is designed to lead a woman back to herself. And it's always heart opening. It's always about what is blocking this flow of love. So my work is around clearing the debris that stands in the way of opening to more of ourselves first, in order to open to others and to the world and the planet. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, what is it that what is it that women need? And I guess sitting in circle for this long now, it's always really beautiful to watch women come in and they think they're the only one who has this issue, this problem, this feeling, you know. And so I keep saying, just sit in circle, because it's in the reflection of the faces around the circle that you hear the same thing that's going on for you, and you come out of that isolation and think, I'm the only one. It's like, oh my God, you've gone through that too, or you find such a resource in community. And I guess for me also, if I didn't have the community around me I did at the time to pull me up, through some difficult times, I could possibly have been lost. So it's so fantastic to see that happening. I'm facilitating the experience, but within that, these women are connecting and building their own community. It's fantastic, I love it.
And the reasons, have you seen that there are themes as to the reasons why women, I guess, come to your doorstep and say...
The common theme, just that whole lack of valuing, So what shows up constantly is how lost women become behind relationships, behind, well, who am I when I'm no longer a mother, or, my kids are grown up, they don't need me, or, I've been working here for so long, or divorce, or something like that. Well, who am I? So the common theme is the loss. We've lost ourselves. So, we don't do the practices, we don't do the work that, we don't bring our attention to ourselves. Because our attention as women is often out there to everybody else, and we're the last one in line that we give it to, and that shows up. And it's mostly, for me in my experience, I would say late 30s up. It just seems to be triggered at a particular age, and the questioning starts. Is this it? Is this all there is? What happens now? Who am I after divorce? Who am I after death? Who am I after all of these? The kids have left. What if I've been made redundant at work? My identity, my value, all of that. I thought my worth was in all of those things. But if we've had an occasion in life where all of that is stripped away from us, who are we?
Are there any tips or anything that you think, just that someone could have a play with at home? Like, what would you recommend, like, women, the one thing that a woman could do for herself that might just have her value herself just that little bit more?
Look, there's 1,000 things. I can rattle off 1,000 things. Look, I guess, the one that's most uncomfortable for women is when I say to them, one day you'll fall truly, madly, deeply in love with yourself. And there's a real, straight away automatically all those old beliefs and things come up around, well, you're not supposed to, that's selfish, that's narcissistic. It's self-full, it's loving, and I say this to women: remember that you are the most profound role model for those children of yours, for the grandchildren that come along, for the people in your life. So if you are not walking your talk, if you've got a little one that you're trying to say to her, you're beautiful and you're lovely and you're perfect, if you don't believe that about yourself, it just translates down the line, So the best gift you can be for those around you is be the best version of you.
Thank you for your time, Alison. I'm really, really grateful for it.
Thank you for the opportunity.